Hi Seeds community, welcome. And Cal, welcome.
Thank you.
We are going to have a little conversation about the community exchange to update the Seeds community on what's been going on, and just kind of to try to give a condensed kind of timeline about where we've come from and where we are right now. And I think you and I are kind of living in it often, all the time. And so sometimes it's important for us to stop and go, wait, we have to catch everybody else up, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's what we hope this video will do for you. So I want to give us all a bit of a simplified update on where we've been. A couple of years before our 20th birthday as a church in 2019, or maybe it was even 2018, we started talking about the next 20 years. And that led us into a process. And out of that process came this idea. And the idea, in very unformed kind of ways, was to have a central kind of hub, a place where there would be opportunities for the community to meet, for people to be supported and resourced, and kind of like the place to come, right? Mm-hmm. This was something that started from the Seeds community. And it's not a Seeds thing anymore. Seeds started a conversation. Seeds had an idea about a very broad community connection gathering. There was lots of ideas around food and whatever. That's a couple of years ago, and so much has happened since then. So can you just kind of walk us through what happened after basically the Seeds community said it would be amazing to connect the larger community through food and resource and support and connection?
You know, I have this memory of us having a vision team breakfast at Chicken Chef / Papa's.
Chicken Schleff.
It's the Chicken Schleff, which morphed into Chicken Chef. It's a kind of a new franchise. I remember us having breakfast in that back room where the steakhouse used to be. And I remember us talking about the next 20 conversation and about, where this could all go. And I remember volunteering at that point to say, hey, I'm willing to go out and have some conversations with community members to see what interest there might be in what, what we're talking about. Which is really cool, because if you think of where all those conversations went and where that's kind of all led, so that led to a series of conversations with a bunch of individuals and different agencies, different organizations, corporations, local businesses, local residents. Led us down a path where I think things started to get clearer as far as what the community was looking for, and then led us into a conversation with other people from within the community that were interested in partnering with us on this, like becoming a part of the process, not just waving from the sidelines, but actually joining in a process. And so that brought us to where we are today, where we have a group of, depending on who's all there, 9 or 10 people that represent a really broad swath of people from our community, both very diverse as far as gender identity, ethnicity, religious background, non-religious background, a group of people that have embraced this vision of what we now call the community exchange, what it could be and what it might be in the future.
Yeah. And that group of people went through a process called the Path, where where they worked to articulate kind of the vision. And I think, again, there's a lot that one could say about it, but what's really important, I think, for our Seeds community to know as this thing is that this thing that started as a seed within Seeds is now outside of Seeds. And I think what we as a church community did, what we started, the conversations we had, really important, but it became clear fairly quickly that if it was truly going to be a community initiative, that it not be tethered to one particular group.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And what's interesting is, on the one hand, this group now clearly there's no formal connection to Seeds, and yet without the support and nurturing of both individuals from Seeds and Seeds as the broader community, this organization would struggle to get off the ground.
Yeah.
It's like we've birthed this infant, and without our help, it's not going to grow.
Right.
And yet it is a completely separate individual that will gain autonomy over time as
Right.
it grows.
So what we want to communicate, I think, a little bit, is to help the Seeds community understand that it birthed from Seeds, it's gone outside of Seeds, there's still connections, it may feel very kind of confusing about what this is. And the group, the diverse group that has been meeting, is the group that named it the Community Exchange, and it is incorporated, am I right?
Yes, we are incorporated. We
Okay.
are a non-profit corporation.
Right.
Province of Manitoba.
Yeah. So you need to understand that Cal is speaking from that hat now, not a Seeds hat, but we incorporated the Community Exchange.
Yep.
Part of the process with the Community Exchange group was about where is this place going to be? Where is the location? Where is the building where we're going to start this thing? Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's been so interesting because even though today I guess I'm wearing the Community Exchange hat, clearly I'm pretty connected to Seeds, and how those of us who are connected to Seeds have been so sensitive to the fact that we are a church, and that we are the owners of this building, and we recognize that throughout the process and throughout these conversations we've had, that it became very clear to all of us involved that this new entity needed to be a non-faith-based organization and not connected in any way, shape to anything remotely evangelical or any kind of a religious mandate or agenda, right?
And that isn't about us being ashamed of our faith. It is about having a place for the whole community.
Exactly. A safe place where anyone can come, no matter what their affiliation or lack of affiliation. But what I found interesting is that through these conversations with all of these non-Seeds folks, and in many cases non-churched folks, and in some cases even they align with another faith tradition, how we would be the ones that would be coming and saying how sensitive we are about the fact that this has been a church until now, and is that going to be an obstacle? Because earlier we had people from our own congregation saying it's probably not a good idea for it to be here because this is seen as a church. And then we go out to the broader community and they say, no, you guys have actually done a good job of, even though it's a church, you've made it a safe place. And it seems like a natural extension of what you've already started years back when you moved into that building.
Right.
And so we'll call it a board for lack of a better word, but this board, this Community Exchange board, has been so receptive to the idea of it being in this location.
Seeds owns the building at 116 Main Street. We called it the Exchange. We had a naming contest, actually. We named it the Exchange because part of Seeds, the vision of Seeds, when we moved into the space, was that there would be lots of different connections, that it would be a place that would kind of cultivate a relationship that would go across boundaries. And so I think that's been in our vision, but we have underutilized the space of 116 Main Street. And we've also tried to be clear that 116 Main Street isn't the church. Seeds is a church. Seeds, the community, is a church. And 116 Main Street is building. And so now we own that building. Seeds owns that building. And the budding organization called the Community Exchange has decided it is willing to be housed at 116 Main Street as well. And what do we need to know about that?
You know, in our conversations and in our connections, both within our board and outside of that, we've been going through the last 6 months, we've been inviting people in to conversation with us on a monthly basis, other community members, to find out things about their lives and needs, but also to see how this kind of an idea would resonate with other people. And one of the things that's come through quite clearly is that if this is to be a truly community-based concept, idea, vision, then it needs to be perceived as a it needs to be perceived as a very safe place.
Not just perceived, but it needs to be a safe place.
Maybe even needs to be. There you go. Let's just say it.
Let's just
Let's
be
just say
bold.
Be bold. It needs to be a safe place that is, in essence, owned by the community or controlled by the community. That this isn't some kind of subversive church approach through the back door that, right now they make it look like a community center, but they're going to lambaste us with something at some point, right? It really needs to be controlled by this group of people that represent the broader community.
Right. How that looks practically, I think we're still trying to figure out. One of the things that we want to communicate, I think, to Seeds is right now we own the building at 116 Main Street. And we have an opportunity to share power. I have kind of wrestled a bit with the word control because control can feel tricky. But we have this opportunity as Seeds right now, that people that are owners of the building, to really use our power to divest of that power in ways that share. And I think that we're still in a process of really defining that and figuring out how that works exactly. But what I've heard the group, the Community Exchange group, really working at, and I am part of that group as well, is this idea that when we give up, Seeds' interests as primary, that we allow an opportunity for the Community Exchange, which might have community meals, and it might have, different kinds of support groups and different resources and different things kind of flowing in and out of that as a church, we wouldn't kind of say, well, we deserve first dibs on everything, but that we become the kind of, right now, landlords, I guess, that are willing to to let the community exchange have a primary seat in that, in what happens in that place and even the design of the place. Is that fair? Like, is that a good way of saying it, or what would you add stuff to that or take stuff away?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know you don't like the word control, but letting go of control, releasing control, I think I think it's a good way of describing it. You know, we've had conversations within the SEEDS resource team about this. And so, you know, like the mandate to our resource team is to make sure that the interests of SEEDS are looked after while making sure that the vision, the original vision that SEEDS had for this new entity are realized. And so there's this kind of this tug of war there, right? Like it could be perceived as that, I guess, perceived. But there's a tension there, right? To, you know, on the one hand, make sure, like, I think as landlords, we'll make sure that there is space for us to have Sunday morning worship, and that there's space for some kind of activities in the rest of the space. But if you think of the day-to-day, week-to-week activities that go on, it's a shared space. And there'll have to be a central place for reserving space. And, you know, today you can walk in, seeing as how more or less half the community have keys, you just sort of walk in and help yourself do whatever, that'll change.
Yeah.
And it'll be a little bit more formal, and there'll be just a little bit more of a process to be able to go. At the same time, we envision that there'll probably be somebody there a lot of the time. And so the doors will be open more than they have been, and more accessible that way. So it's going to be a learning process for all of us as to how we share this space.
And practically speaking, the community exchange is planning to launch in September of 2022. And so that's when we might start to see a lot more flow in and out of that space, and to see us practically sharing that space a lot more. So a lot of our thinking right now and a lot of our talking seems theoretical because it hasn't actually launched, and maybe for the SEEDS community might still feel like, I don't know, still don't quite know what the community exchange is. And I think we're going to see how those, like what that looks like and what programs are going to be kind of taking place in that space, and what.
Who will be partnering?
Yeah, who'll all be partnering with it. But in the meantime, I think we just want to kind of prepare the community, I think, for the reality that the community exchange and SEEDS are separate, and both of them are going to be housed at 116 Main Street. And there's some rebranding coming up in terms of highlighting the community exchange, so that we continue to share the message that 116 Main Street is not a church, a community, a church community. SEEDS meets there, but there's a lot of things that are going on in this space.
Yep.
What have we missed? What?
Well, I mean, there's just so much we could talk about. So, and that would take hours. But I think as we're talking here, you know, what I have found interesting, being a part of most of these conversations, when we had these next 20 conversations and we envisioned what might happen in this building, this is well before the community exchange was even part of our consciousness,
Thinking,
right?
yeah.
We talked about food, and we talked about connecting, and now this separate group of people that weren't connected to, other than a few of us that were part of those, but the rest of these people weren't a part of that, go through this path process. And what's the number one thing that comes up as a core pillar for us is we need to connect around food. We need to find ways to connect the community around food. What's the second thing? We need to find ways to connect people to services and to organizations and support and structure. And the third thing is, how do we come together to talk about topics, and how do we learn from each other? And in one way or another, those were all things that came through our conversations with our own congregation. And they seem to resonate so well with this group as well. And it's not like we didn't bring them to that. We didn't say, by the way, here's what Seeds came
Here's
up
our
with.
agenda.
No, we had facilitators come in,
Yeah,
and we all started with a clean page,
yeah,
and we went from there. So the only other thing I would add is, I think we've talked about the need for people to get this information, and then for people to have an opportunity to ask questions and to weigh in, right, with concerns and questions or visions or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But if all went well, then by this fall we'd probably do a little bit of a facelift on the front of the building, and there'd probably be some new signage that would be going up. It's not going to be drastic, but it'll be something that hopefully we'll get some media hype from the local Golden West and Pembina Valley Online and stuff about a community-based project that's now centered at 116 Main Street.
yeah. It's exciting.
It is.
And I think, if people have been to the exchange, that they would see that, the kitchen is being, or is now fully ready as a commercial kitchen. It means we can use it in a much bigger
Yep.
sense than what we were able to before. Some flooring and some painting has started. So this is kind of all in preparation for the launch of the community exchange in September.
Yep, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe it's also important to say that on sometime in June, we're hoping for a conversation at Seeds to just allow people to ask more questions.
Yep.
But yeah, lots has happened. And of course, there was like the conversation got started before COVID, then COVID put a pause on it in one way, but also allowed for the germination of the idea and for some conversations to happen. And now, in the last 6 months, there's been very significant steps forward. So a lot of people working hard, and kind of neat to see where it will all go.
Yeah, and from a facility standpoint, I think the transformation will just continue
Yeah,
as we utilize resources and apply for grants, and for anybody that's been paying attention to any local media has seen that organizations like Central Station or the Community Center of Morden, which name I don't remember what it is. Maybe it's called the Hub. Have all applied for and received grants. And there's again a way where the Seeds community, we're fortunate that we're in a healthy position financially, and through COVID we didn't spend a lot. So we've got some additional resources that we could leverage to maybe get matching funding to help renovate the facility so that it's great for both the community use and the community Seeds, the congregational use. So some good things that come out of that.
we have this beautiful space. I think that so
Everybody
many
that
people.
walks in,
Yeah,
and now we did that little facelift with the paint and the kitchen, and the comments I've heard there too is, oh, it's so nice and refreshed,
yeah.
and it's just such a lovely space. So, yeah, and it's accessible.
And will become more accessible.
Mhm.
So that's the update we have for you. Hopefully that's helpful. And there'll be more conversations and updates to come. Thanks for joining me, Cal.
Cheers.
Cheers.